Siheyuan is Chinese for courtyard. At least it is if I've said it vaguely correctly, and I'm not entirely sure I have, so I apologise in advance to all Chinese gamers if I've just butchered that. But it is the title for this 1 to 4 player cooperative puzzle game that I've been absolutely loving since it came out right at the end of last month. This is a game that is deceptively simple from its minimalistic design, but it is stressful because you're having to coordinate multiple things at the same time. And whenever you're doing something right on one side of the screen, something's normally going wrong on the other side, and you're having to mitigate all of your problems and losses in the best way possible and choosing exactly when to get things right and clear up your mess. In Siheyuan, you have your courtyard in the centre of the screen, and then around the edge of that you can see there's like outlined rows of blocks, and there'll be 1, 2 or 3 rows deep of these depending on the level that you're playing. And the idea and the goal for every level is to fill those squares with tiles that match the colour. So you've got red, white, blue and black. Now those tiles come from the 4 different corridors that are walking the tiles down to the centre courtyard. So there will always usually be red at the bottom, black at the top, white coming from the left and blue tiles coming from the right. However, as you can see, the squares don't necessarily match that up, and herein comes the beauty of Siheyuan. You need to move those tiles around, but when you do, you don't move an individual tile, you move everything in a corridor. So if you're playing on focus mode, if you press up or down, that will affect the blue and white corridors at the same time because you're affecting that axis, and so everything in those 2 corridors will move simultaneously. If you're pressing left or right to move things left or right, you'll get the red and black corridors moving simultaneously because it's moving on that axis too. And whenever something moves off of a corridor, depending on whether there's some power-ups going on or not at the same time, it will then appear like rotating around. So the gaps in between the corridors, you'll move out of one and just magically appear on the edge of the next one. And this is where the key is, because you're trying to work out how can I quickly spin some tiles around, get one to land in the best place possible. Say if there's like a blue square on the left hand side, it's going to make a whole 180 spin. But in doing so, you're then spinning everything else around at the same time and causing chaos. So things will be landing in the wrong slots. You'll be piling things up like Tetris blocks on top of each other, which will then block you being able to spin stuff around if it goes too high. And the game is over, basically, when you've blocked something up all the way to the top of a corridor on any of the 4, and it becomes a game over because you can't kind of get rid of it and clear it. Now, the key with all of this is that not only are there those 4 coloured blocks, you also have yellow blocks, and these dissolve and get rid of singular blocks whenever they crash into them. So if you've got loads and loads of blocks that are ending up in the wrong squares, or you've got like towers of blocks all piling in on top of each other, you use those yellow blocks to get rid of them and create new paths and get new gaps open. But they also are subject to the same problems of moving left and right. So you might be busy moving a block into the right space, but in doing so, some of the yellow blocks then might be erasing some of the moves that you've already done. And you're like, no! And that's the beauty of the game, because you're constantly having this kind of juggle of, I've got it right over here, but I'm buggering it up over there. And that's the beauty of the game. There's 13 levels in total, and each one has something different or unique about it, and it brings in all of these different modifiers. Now, some of them will be like a really quick cascade of blocks flying down. Some of them add on purple blocks, which you can't place anywhere, and so you then have to use those yellow blocks to get rid of them. Some of them will mean that you'll only have a rotation in a certain direction, which is really a pain in the bum, because sometimes you'll be like, I need to get from like left to top, but I'm going to have to go all the way around rather than being able to just move a couple of rows across. Then there's other things like making sure that all of the walls just dissolve blocks so you can't move from corridor to corridor. There's also ones where instead of, if you move up thinking that you're going to move to the top block, it will actually reappear on the bottom one, so everything's like vice versa. There's another power up where when you move the blocks around, it randomly allocates a new colour to your block, so it's really chaotic. There's loads of these, and they keep pairing or joining them up so that there's like 4, 5 or 6 of them all being chosen from the centre square, and they kind of roll like a dice and pick which one it's going to throw at you next. And this is the other kind of chaotic element to this game, is that it's difficult enough already to make sure that you get all of the different blocks in the right place, but it's throwing new spins and new things for you to react to constantly. And it keeps adding more and more and more across the 13 levels, making it very, very tricky for you to get to the end. Now, so long as you stay alive, you don't reach a game over, and everything in Siheyuan is around making sure that you can get the best time possible. There are a couple of different speeds to the game that you can unlock, which means that the blocks will drop quicker. But there's also 2 different control schemes when you're playing in single player mode. Now, how I described it to you earlier is the standard mode, where it affects each axis. So if you press left and right, you've got top and bottom, up and down affects the left and right corridors. You can go into focus mode, which is where you use the face buttons of the controller to select a single corridor and then move things up and down there. But I actually found that more difficult to play and harder to complete. But what it does do is it focuses you for when you want to play local co-op. Because the idea is that if you've got 2, 3 or 4 players, you only look after your corridor. And so if you've got 4 players, you each pick a corridor and you'll be busy passing blocks from one to the other. If you're playing 2, you'll take over 2. With 3, someone will have to control 2. Wah, wah. But that's the beauty of this cooperative gameplay, because then you really have to work together, because you'll be frantically passing blocks from one person to another to then dispose round. And if you've got some of those modifiers that purposefully throw you into chaos, you're going to have to work and react as a team, probably shouting at each other quite dramatically to get things over the line. I think for £2.49 this is an absolute steal, and it's one of my favourite puzzle games that I've found in 2023. It's excellently designed, it feels unique, it's chaotic, it's stressful, but extremely rewarding when you do get to the end of it and clear a level and move on to the next thing. I think cooperative will be an absolute fantastic addition for like-minded players if you enjoy this type of thing. There's nothing else really quite out there like Siheyuan, and so yeah, it gets definitive 2 thumbs up from me, and hopefully puzzle fans will enjoy it and love this one too. Higher Plane Games is part of the Higher Plane Network, a completely independent media outlet supported by people like you. The goal is to create the best possible content that cultivates a richer indie scene for games as well as music and entertainment. To find out more and to get involved, visit patreon.com/higherplane-network. Your support makes all the difference, and in return you'll gain access to bonus content and downloads. Thank you for watching.